So Marla, thank you for coming. I really appreciate you here. I've known Marla for more than 20 years and even engaged her services at one point too.
Yeah, I did.
And I think you add a lot to this podcast, being a business owner, going through your entrepreneurial journey. And also, I want you to talk a little bit about the emotional freedom technique, which we'll go into a
Yep.
little bit, because I think that's something that people might be able to understand and kind of hook on to as another technique. So that's kind of where I think we'll end up, and free flowing, and we'll figure it
Yeah.
all out as we
So
get
fun.
there. So what I like to do is kind of start out with you just telling, your journey, your entrepreneurial journey of how you got from where you were to here, because it's really interesting, and you're writing a book on it too,
I
which will be
am.
very exciting when it comes out. So
Thank
go for it.
you. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I love what you're doing. I'm
Thank
very
you.
excited about that.
I like
So
what I'm doing
to be
too.
a part of it, it means a lot to me, Robert. Thank you. Yeah, I worked for NBC television for 22 years thinking I was going to retire from there.
Mhm.
And things changed. My husband passed away, and my girls were going into adolescence, and I felt like I needed to be closer to home. And so I left there, and after trying out a couple of jobs and doing a few
Yeah.
other things, just nothing could compare to NBC, right? I mean, hello, right? And so I did what any red-blooded American girl would do, and I opened a coffee house.
I love that coffee house.
It
I
was
remember it.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, the Fat Bean Coffee House right here in Naperville. And unfortunately, it was on September 1st that I opened a coffee house. And I was set to retire at that time. I wasn't worried about money or anything else. And then 9/11 tragically came along.
Yes.
Yeah. And all that money I had put away to live on and infuse into the business and whatnot just, and
Mm-hmm.
I had to draw from it,
Mm-hmm.
from its practically non-existent basis as
Yes.
business slowed.
Yeah.
So it became a really difficult financial journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hired a coach
Mm-hmm.
because emotionally the weight was just far too heavy, and I needed help grounding myself so that I could think more strategically, get myself out of this mess and whatnot. And Steve was an amazing coach, but he was a psychologist. And
Yes.
so he was too careful not to cross those barriers from psychologist to coach, and he wouldn't
Hmm.
talk about the emotions. And that's what I needed the most. And so
Wow.
I decided I would shut down the coffee house. And I said to Steve, I want to do what you do, only different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
ended up, I sold the coffee house, long story short, to a couple of scammers, ended up losing everything else I had, whole different story. But Steve was amazing to me. He mentored me through schooling and gave me my first pro bono clients. And I'm celebrating my 20th year
Mm-hmm.
in coaching this
Mm-hmm.
year, and I
Wow.
haven't looked back. It's been
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Thank you.
So, y- you coach really successful people, right? It could be executives, it could be entrepreneurs. You do a lot with entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you wrote for Inc. magazine for 15 years,
Yes.
which is quite amazing. Um, and so you have all this depth of knowledge. So when it comes to dealing with entrepreneurs, if you think about it, a person is doing everything right, maybe they're successful, but they're really not happy or they're not taking that next step. Can you kind of talk about how that works, or what's going on in a person's brain, and what you do to kind of help them get from where they are, maybe identify what's going on and get to where they want to
Yeah,
be?
yeah. My sweet spot in coaching, Robert, is the entrepreneur who has the potential of being highly successful and scaling their business. And they've gotten to a certain level,
Hmm.
they can afford a coach.
Yes.
So
Yeah, yeah,
they're at
yeah.
a certain
Minor
level,
detail. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But they're just not doing it.
Hmm.
And when I started coaching, I came in like anybody fresh out of school does, right? With the bravado of, I'm going to help these people strategize and build their businesses. And what I learned was entrepreneurs are brilliant. They know how to do it.
Yeah.
They just don't do it
Yes.
because of what's up here.
Yeah.
And, I know that you're on a mission to help men transition during periods of their lives into happiness
Yeah.
and find their joy and their passion
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest that when I started coaching, I steered away from coaching men
Hmm.
because Um, all of the tools that I gathered after realizing that it wasn't enough to help with strategy, and I
Mhm.
learned EFT, which we'll talk about, and other
Yeah.
tools, required somebody to be vulnerable with their emotions.
Yes.
And 20 years ago, men
Okay.
couldn't do that,
Uh-huh.
right?
Hmm.
And I'm so happy to say that that is shifting. And probably 50% of my client base is now the
Really?
male
Okay.
entrepreneur. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
actually not surprised because I think you'd work really well with men.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love it. There's something about that vulnerable space when they get to the place where they're willing to open up and share
Hmm.
what's going on for them
Hmm.
and what's blocking them. That is it's just such a sacred space to be there with them.
Hmm.
And it's such an honor and to help them through that and to shift the paradigm. You know, they were raised thinking men need to be strong,
Hmm.
right? Men are providers. And really that's in the DNA, right? The cavemen were providers. It's
Yes.
in the DNA.
Yeah.
And so when a business doesn't bring joy anymore, or they're struggling in business, or whatever, that goes right to the heart of who they are.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah,
they know that something's wrong and they come to you. So is it kind of like a process of just kind of talking with them, or what's going on in their brain that I'm not either it's not being successful, I'm not providing,
yeah,
hey, I need somebody. But there comes a point in time when there's a realization that they figure out what's going on, right? Why they're doing it. So what do
yeah,
you see happening there?
yeah.
What's the typical?
So typically, and this is true of men and women, but
Hmm.
I'm focusing on my male clientele right now
Sure.
in this conversation. Typically, there's a problem with I'm overwhelmed,
Hmm.
I'm unhappy, I'm
Hmm.
depressed, I have no one to talk
Yes.
to.
That's it's part of the whole model I'm doing to help people. Yes. Yeah. Go
Yep.
on. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And so they're very, very busy chasing their tail, trying to get the business to be successful,
Hmm.
and the business it becomes a mess because they're not paying attention to the things that they should pay attention to. So,
Hmm.
for instance, I have a client who came in and he was so busy and desperate out there trying to get new clients, and then he was doing so much of the work
Hmm.
himself
Hmm.
because he couldn't afford the labor and he wasn't watching any metrics, so he wasn't charging enough, and time on the job was going, he was losing money in business,
Hmm.
basically,
Hmm.
because he wasn't watching any of his metrics. He didn't even have established metrics
Sure.
um, and things in place, procedures in place for the employees he did have. So we backed way up and established, okay, what's important here?
Hmm.
And we found ways for him to step outside of the business a little bit to find some joy.
Good.
And he actually, when we do that, we become more productive. You
Yes.
know, we have this hard work mentality in our society, the grit, the determination,
Work harder, live
yeah, work
longer.
hard,
Yeah.
success is hard, BS. You got to let go of that.
Yeah.
You got to let go of it on some level. Do we need to work hard? Of course. But as I was saying before we
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
shooting, I'm in a place in my career where I feel like I'm on vacation every day, even when I'm
Yes.
working, right?
Yes.
And that's what we want for everybody. So backing up, getting strategies in place, getting procedures in place, hiring the right people,
Hmm.
and doing an entrepreneur's job
Hmm.
instead of being stuck in the daily grind of the business.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So really taking them outside, but let's talk about the joy part, shall we?
Yeah,
Because I'm all about joy. That would be nice.
yeah,
Um, so how do you help people to define what that means or how it works?
yeah, absolutely.
And how does that fit into the business model and the relationship model? Because most people are in a relationship too.
Yeah. And because if you're in a relationship and you're unhappy in your life outside of the relationship, oh my gosh, that just pours into the relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we can't talk about it. And in a lot of times the significant other, the partner, doesn't get it. They don't get it because they're not entrepreneurs necessarily.
Yeah.
So
Very
it's
true.
really
Very
hard to
true.
understand where this person is coming from. So it's so important to have somebody in your life, a mentor, a therapist, a coach, who really understands where you're coming from and can help you parse out what's
Hmm.
going on.
Hmm.
I had a client who came to me a couple of years ago, and he was in insurance,
Hmm.
and he was doing great in his business, but then he got bored,
Hmm.
and he'd lost track of why he was doing it, and he inherited. This sounds kind of backwards to say, but he inherited multiple seven figures from his parents,
Hmm.
and he became miserable, just miserable. And so he thought, I'm gonna I'm gonna go out and buy expensive boats, and I'm gonna go out and buy a
Okay.
$700,000 car, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
buy a lake house. And then the more he spent this money, the more miserable he was.
Sure.
And so he came into coaching, and we uncovered beliefs like, my parents worked so hard for this money that I was neglected as a child.
Hmm.
I won't do that to my kids,
Hmm.
right? I
Hmm.
want to get rid of this money. Subconscious, right?
Got it.
Got
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get rid
yeah,
of this
yeah,
money.
yeah.
Dangerous, dangerous. My kids are too
Yeah.
important to me. I can't hold on to this money,
Yeah.
right? I don't deserve this money.
Yeah.
I didn't work hard for this money.
Mm.
And so he just went down this, path that was just annihilating his entire, true self. It just wasn't coming through anymore. So we went back to the passion. What's really important to you, and how could this money do good?
Yeah.
And in a very tearful conversation, he realized for the first time that he was put here to help um, advance research and whatever he could do to support childhood cancer, because he had a sister who died of childhood cancer.
Got it.
And he realized that this money could be used for good.
Hmm.
And everything just changed for him as soon as he found what I call that the vision beyond the vision.
Yeah. Okay.
So we
Got
have a
it. I
vision for our
like that. Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
And then entrepreneurs, when they get to a certain level in their business, they almost always
Hmm.
find that vision beyond the vision,
Yeah.
and it becomes their new why.
Hmm.
And so that was his vision beyond the vision.
Hmm. I like that. I
Yeah,
like how you say that.
thank you.
And yeah, so the joy, so he found his vision beyond the vision, which really stimulated his
The joy
business.
and the business. Yeah,
And he realized why he was giving up all this money
yep,
so that he could consciously understand
yeah,
the change and make it the change.
exactly,
Interesting.
exactly. And we lose sight of joy when we're struggling.
Hmm.
Struggle isn't fun. We lose sight. I have this female entrepreneurs group that gathers at my home once a month, and I was speaking to this one person who's just miserable in her business now. And I asked her why she did it.
Hmm.
And when she described it, and she went back 4 years ago when she opened the business, she and I are kind of on the same path. Mine is a coffee house, hers is a wine
Got
place,
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And she went back to that 4 years ago, and she realized that she'd lost sight of the reason she started this business.
Yes.
And when she could tap into that again, you could see the change. Just it was physical. It was
Lit her up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, her assignment is to really focus on that every day, to send those messages to the
Hmm.
brain from the subconscious mind,
Hmm.
from that emotion that we can develop,
Hmm.
so that filter in the brain, the reticular activating system, can open up and allow more of the good in, instead of what she's focusing on, which is the ugly.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and you do a lot about mind shifting, a
Yes.
lot of mind shifting. So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about how EFT can help get a person break through some of these barriers, I guess, right?
Yes.
So talk a little bit about the mind shift, about how you help people to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So, writing for Inc. for so many years, I wrote a lot about mindset
Mhm.
there. And of course, in my practice and my studies, I've studied neuroscience, and I'm a neuroscience nerd and such. So I understand how the brain works in relation to what we want and how we get it in the world.
Mhm.
And so I have accumulated all these processes and tools and such. And I was out with a friend once, a fellow coach and
Mhm.
an author, and I was frustrated because I couldn't define these. Like, I couldn't sum up what is this group of processes so I can create something out of it.
Yeah.
And so she asked me, "Well, tell me what it means. What does it do?" And I said, I was just so forceful. I said, it helps entrepreneurs get the bullshit that is in their brain out of
Yeah.
themselves, so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they can refocus, shift their minds, and shift the way they're thinking, and get what they want in the world. And she said, "Bullshift."
Yeah. There you go.
Bullshift. And so that's my process is bullshift. And it's all about the things, some of these things we use in therapy, it's about reframing. It's
Hmm.
about asking questions like, is that thought, that catastrophizing thought that you have, is that really, really true? Is
Hmm.
that really going to happen? What's the worst case scenario
Hmm.
here?
Hmm.
And so it's about asking the provocative questions that get us outside of the paradigm
Yes.
that we've been living in since childhood and think outside of our limiting beliefs.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, that is, I always say that these steps are simple,
Hmm.
but not always easy,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think it was Jim Rohn who used to say that too. Yeah.
Okay,
It's perfect.
being
It's
Jim.
simple, just not
Not
easy.
easy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And so, my little secret weapon in my business, I learned shortly after opening my coaching practice, and it is emotional freedom techniques,
Hmm.
EFT, also known as tapping.
Hmm.
And in the last just 5 years, it's become so widespread now.
It
Therapists are
is.
using it.
Everybody's using it. Yeah.
Everyone is using it. And I'm so excited. I've been doing it for 19 years. And finally, people don't say, yeah, what?
Yeah, it's getting recognition, and when you say, "Hey, we're going to use this," people go, "Oh, okay,"
Okay.
versus, "Huh?"
Huh? I'm not
Yeah,
doing that,
yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because it involves actually tapping
Hmm.
on your face and it feels stupid. I mean, really, honestly, it feels stupid. That's the first thing I have to tap with most people is that this feels really stupid. I don't want to do this.
That's funny.
So basically, when we experience any level of trauma in our life, Rob,
Hmm.
there's a neural pathway that's created, and
Hmm.
it's like a groove in an old-fashioned vinyl record,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
We know this now. And when you're tuned in to that trauma
Hmm.
and certain aspects of that trauma, and you're tapping, and you're really tuned into the pain of this, really, it actually kind of blows up that neural pathway
Hmm.
so that it can make room for the truth, right? And I've worked with people who have been through extraordinary circumstances, abuse and rape and loss of, precious children and things like that. And what they say and what I've experienced is before and after tapping, you're still associated into that experience and you're experiencing the trauma of it throughout your daily life, whether
Hmm.
you know it or not.
Hmm.
After tapping, it's like there's a curtain between you and it. You know
Got
it
it.
happened, it
Yeah.
happened to you, but you can't grab onto it anymore.
Got it. Yeah.
And it no longer controls the way you think, act, and speak.
Yeah. And that's
So
critical.
it's
Yeah. So
pretty
basically, you have the
critical.
limiting beliefs, and then you
Hmm.
have the new beliefs that you've helped them
Yeah.
pull out, and so it really helps take those limiting beliefs and put an emotional barrier up so that they can actually focus on the new beliefs. Is that kind of
I wouldn't call it an emotional barrier, okay?
okay?
I would say that it actually disconnects the emotion altogether. It doesn't even exist.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So it's not
interesting.
like you're burying
Yeah,
it.
you're not putting up a barrier. It's just gone.
It's gone.
Huh.
It's gone. I once worked with a woman who can I tell kind of a gruesome story? Is that okay? A little gruesome?
Well, you already started, so
Sorry,
yes.
I have to. Her boyfriend committed suicide in front of her, and he did it. They were in the bedroom. She was sitting on the bed. He was standing there, and he shot himself, and he fell onto her.
Holy crap.
And that trauma, she just dissociated from everything.
Hmm.
And she felt she could never love or be loved.
Yeah.
She knew she would never have children. She was going through life just like, oh, it was just horrible. She came to me several years later. And so we tapped on that. We did 2 sessions, and I never heard from her again for 7 years.
Wow.
And I was sad, because I thought I didn't help her.
Yeah.
7 years later, I get this email from her that says, Marla, I am married to the love of my life. We have 2 children. I've never been happier. I couldn't come back to you or talk to you again because I saw you as the vessel where I left this trauma.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yes, yes. And so 2 sessions of tapping remove that trauma from her life in terms of any emotional connection or control
Yes.
that it had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, not to be mistaken, EFT isn't just for big trauma,
Mhm.
right? we have limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough. I remember in third grade, one of my teachers had me write a sentence from my essay on the board, and I thought I was a really good writer,
Yeah.
and so I was really proud.
Yeah.
And she picked it apart in front of the whole
Ooh.
class, everything that was wrong with this
Yeah.
sentence. And so I told myself I could never write. I'll never be a writer. And years later, what? I used
I remember.
EFT on that one,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
wrote for Inc. for 15 years,
Yeah.
and Times Business, and
Yeah.
lots of publications. So it's for all levels of trauma and limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I like it, and it could be you get upset in traffic, right? So you can tap while you're going in traffic,
You know it.
and try to minimize that,
Yep.
because that definitely happens. Well, for other people, right? I never get upset
You
in
never get
traffic.
road rage
Never,
or upset
never,
about,
never.
no, of course
Just don't
not.
talk to my family about that. And that's what it is. So have you mentioned that there's been kind of a shift from 20 years ago when you started to now about what men are willing to do or willing to think about. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that shift of what's going on?
Yeah. I think that mental health in and of itself
Mhm.
is becoming less of a taboo subject.
Yes.
And I can't say why necessarily. I haven't really researched it. Men are more willing to talk about their emotions now, but I just think in general society is changing. And I really think going through COVID might have actually assisted in that because a lot of people got therapeutic help
Hmm.
during and
Hmm.
after COVID that they might not have ever sought out
Hmm.
otherwise. Also being in close quarters with your family,
Hmm.
removing yourselves from the daily stress of the job for a little while when we couldn't go into work,
Yes.
you know?
Well, it uncovers the other stressors in a
Exactly.
big way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, most definitely. And I think that it's just becoming, um, the societal norm was the men were the strong ones and,
Hmm.
the women were the supporters. And I think that it's equaling out a little bit, I'd like to
Good. No,
say.
it's good. We
Yeah,
need to.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's benefiting both genders
Yeah.
a lot. And I'm seeing even in a lot of times, I remember in my earlier days of coaching, women were afraid to ask their husbands for emotional support because all they would do was fix it,
No, I get it. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I see where you're coming from.
Right.
Sure.
And men are learning because of people like you and books and other resources that are out there that the feminine mind, no matter which gender it's in, the feminine energy
Hmm. Hmm.
doesn't want to be fixed. It wants support in terms of being heard and
Yes.
validated and
Yes.
understood. And men are starting to do more of that, and so they're starting to receive more of that too,
Hmm.
and open themselves up to the possibility that coaching isn't just about business,
Hmm.
and that they can get support in places like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. That I noticed that too. I went through my struggles, and it's like, where's the support? Where's all this stuff? And so I want to, that's why I'm doing all this, is to show that there is support. There are
Yeah,
people out there willing to do it. And it's just looking around and finding the right organizations and the right support structures
right.
to really help
Yeah,
support
yeah.
in whatever way, mentally, emotionally, and everything like that. And
Hmm.
also that struggles are struggles, and you get through them, and there are different ways. There are people who can help, right? People can
Hmm.
help. There are techniques that you can use which help. And so I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So if there's one thing that you like to convey to people, before we end this, and we'll talk about what you can offer. Um, is there one thing or something that you think, top of mind that you either want people to know, or something that would be a good takeaway for people listening?
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's really important is to listen to your body.
Okay.
Your body is a barometer, and it will tell you when something's askew. You'll feel the tension, whether it's in your head or your stomach or your neck and shoulders. Listen to the body. And when you hear yourself saying something negative about yourself or
Hmm.
others, just society in general, people, whatever, business, life is hard, whatever it is, seek the truth. Seek the truth instead. Ask yourself, is that really, really true? Because typically the stories we tell ourselves are just that. They're
Stories.
BS stories,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And so seek the truth and start to work on working from that place of truth and authenticity
Mhm.
instead of these made up stories that we tell ourselves.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I know you have a couple of offers, right? So why don't you tell people what those are? And we're going to put links in the show notes.
Okay.
So, if you're listening and driving, please don't write down. It,
Yeah.
it'll be there. You can get it. It's okay.
Absolutely. Well, I do a complimentary consultation,
Hmm.
really with any entrepreneur or executive, because synergy is important in coaching, and
Absolutely.
we need to find out if we have that synergy. And your success is my success. I don't take on people I know
Hmm.
I can't help.
Yeah.
So I do that, and you can contact me through my website for that. And there are a couple of downloads on my website. And there's this one 10-day bull shift
Yeah.
challenge. And the bull shift challenge is really great for an introductory to some of the work that I do in my coaching.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other one is 50 questions you should ask yourself but never do. And it's
Hmm.
kind of revealing about your mindset as an
Oh,
entrepreneur.
that's kind of scary.
Yeah, do
I
that
don't
one.
know.
It's
Yeah,
kind of fun.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna have to do that.
yeah, you might.
Yeah. And her website is marlatabaka.com. It's MarlaTabaka.com. And like I said, it'll be in the show notes just in case I figure I'd say it here. So Marla, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming on.
you.
I just love inviting friends on this podcast because, get
Yeah,
to catch
it's all
up and,
about,
and
yeah,
learn a
yeah,
little bit more. So thank
yeah.
you so much. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Robert. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.